let's talk about nurses and doctors.
Yes.
Nurses refusing to join the strike. They're saying, we began the conversation, right? A doctor is saying we are not going back to the hospitals, and then clinical officers joining, and then we have laboratory technicians saying, we are jogging to do this. So tonight we are told by the head of public service, Felix Koske, that they don't have the 12 billion shillings that is needed to take some 1,200 plus interns into the job market. I sat here with the CS Health, and she sat where Maliba is standing. Coincidentally, you just decided to sit there. So
this is the government position on this show.
On the right, that's the government position. Yes. So, Prof, again, what is going to happen? Because the doctors are saying we are not yielding. The government is unfazed. They're saying, what do you mean? Felix Koske comes out and says, we don't even have the money. Maliba told us off air that, no, we start picking the letters tomorrow. What is going to happen? Because we went today to Kenyatta National Hospital. The sorry state, the statement that there's pictures and videos and testimonies, I mean, it's disturbing. What's going to happen?
Yeah, first of all, it's very unfortunate. Let me first of all express my heartfelt, let's say, mercy to those people who are suffering in hospital and there's no doctor. You know, in this world, Ken, when there's no hope, life becomes very hard. Can you imagine lying in a hospital and you know there's no doctor coming? You know, when you go to hospital and you see there's a doctor coming, there's somebody trying to check your blood pressure, you calm down a little bit. But can you imagine you are being in a hospital bed and you are totally hopeless? So this is hopelessness. And I can say you guys said the title that is the shame of a nation. I think that is shame. And I want to say that what is key here is, do you think that whatever the doctors are asking for and the interns are asking for is not something that could be budgeted for? The country normally does what's called national census, isn't it? And they do national census for the sake of planning. They know how many households are in Kenya. They should know how many beds, like let's say general ward beds, high dependency unit beds, ICU beds, how many doctors they require, how many nurses they require. Even WHO has got standards, how many physicians per population and nurses and all those things. Do you want to tell me Kenya Kwanza took up government and they just woke up today, then see doctors on the street, then they're trying to look for money? Do you want to tell me that when they were doing a budget for 2023, 2024, they never knew that nurses, doctors need to be paid, and they never knew how many interns they required? According to me, I do not think that this is just something which has happened by accident. This is something that they knew, because if they don't know, how would you not know about your country? And the data is there. The people who call these interns or start taking out these jobs, is it Azimio that brought them? They were already there. So according to me, there's a budget. There should be money. Saying there's no money is not an excuse. The day that politicians will be told there's no money to pay them, I want to see one day when these MPs, these CSS can also go to the city and say, our salary cannot be paid because there's no money. How comes for other people there's no money, but for some people there's always money and even more? State House has been spending more than the budget. Nobody is spending more than budget. In fact, Ken, when I'll become a head of state one day, I'll show you people how budget should be done. These people do what's called budget allocation. They never actually budget. They never budget. What do I mean by that? All the budgets are in a piece of paper, in an Excel sheet read in Parliament, but the money is not there. The way budget should be done is that when I'm telling you, I have given healthcare this money, that money should be in the account that they can spend. They only do what's called accounting. But here in Kenya, they say we have allocated to Metenga, but you never see the money. I can give you, for example, the Kenya Tourism Board can tell you that when they get allocated, let's say, for example, 400 million, the disbursement at the end of the year can be around 120 million. Why should you just allocate? Where State House can be allocated 1.2 billion, isn't it? But they'll end up spending 3.2 billion. How come some people overspend, others underspend? So that's misuse. Then I want to answer the question about nurses. I talk to nurses because I've done a lot of work in healthcare in Kenya. In Strathmore, we helped set up the School of Institute of Healthcare Management. So there's a nurse who told me, and I think this is a lesson doctors have to get, that whenever they join doctors on the street, Immediately doctors get what they want, doctors go back to work, isn't it? And nurses get nothing. So I want to urge all the health professionals, you should be united. Go to the street with the story of unity. No one should leave the street until everybody gets what they went to the street for. But when somebody's been told, the government do what's called divide and rule. Like now they're telling people, I'm going to get some people who are interns from, KMTC, bring them here. They should say no. Because if you are taken for KMTC to go and hold, let's say, work for doctors so that they can be divided by the government, tomorrow you'll be a doctor. Tomorrow you'll be a nurse. Can the health fraternity be united in a way that they have one voice? But having too many voices which are not working in unison is a problem. Lastly, I disagree there's no money. Ken?
Yes.
What is 12 billion to Kenya Kwanza government? Like, seriously speaking, these 12 billion shillings, we know where we get it. William Ruto said he's going to cut the budget by 300 billion, isn't it? And actually the budget went up by around 400, it was actually 420 billion shillings. You hear the Kenyan budget for 2024-2025 is 4.2 trillion. The budget he found when Uhuru had done his was 3.01 trillion. He put it to 3.6 trillion. Now it has gone to 4.2 trillion. Why is healthcare here? Abuja declaration is clear that we should spend 15% of our GDP on health. Kenya is spending 3%. Yes, they signed those declarations. So according to me, there is money. In fact, there's more than money. Secondly,
so what is, because you've spoken so much, I need to go to Maliba.
Lastly,
yes,
we have been told we lose 2 billion shillings a day by Uhuru Kenyatta. That is during his time. During this time, we have been told corruption has doubled. So we are losing 4 billion per day. 4 billion per day, these guys are looking for 12 billion for a year, isn't it? So it is just like after 4 days or 3 days,
they're able to pay.
From the money we are losing per day, they're able to pay them.
But so those statistics, I really want to know where those statistics are 4 billion.
Now,
corruption.
What he has to do,
I really want to
see
where
when Uhuru said that, William Ruto is the president. He can ask Auditor General. Auditor General was there in Parliament, in Boma, saying that we have budgeted corruption.
Yes.
And I can tell you, for each item you buy, there's corruption money inside it.
Okay, let's bring Maliba in.
First of all, it's important to condemn the ongoing absconding of duty by doctors because there's no doctor strike. We are a country under the rule of law, and there is a court order stopping that particular
industrial action.
Okay. And since the same doctors are going to court at some point, if they are aggrieved, the court as the shrine of justice, that to them that approach it, and to them from whom the word comes from, the shrine to them, it should actually be an edict that is respected. When the doctors go to court to seek redress, they expect the other parties on the other side to respect that. But when the same court actually makes an order, the doctors against the doctors are against that. So, and why do I say that it's important to actually condemn this? Because doctors are essential service providers. It's not like Professor here who actually, he's in the business of selling education. There's proof that human beings can live without education. They are creatures that have no brain, and they have lived much longer. I'm talking about people here who are essential service providers, and for them, a strike is like a nuclear option. We do not arm ourselves with nuclear weapons thinking that we will lose it. Because the concept is the MAD concept, where it's mutual destruction, right? Mutually assured destruction. So doctors and any other person who provides essential services cannot wave around the strike option like it's a joke, because the consequences out of it are actually fatal. That having been said,
before you go to your second point, I hope you won't lose your trail of thought.
Yes.
But I need to ask you this.
Yeah.
You're using the court's ruling to tell the doctors stop absconding duties to go back.
Because that's what they are doing. So long as there is a court order, there is no strike. What we see are people who have absconded duty.
Talk to me about the fact that the same labor court registered a collective bargaining agreement, CBA,
yes,
and told the Ministry of Health back in 2017, must honor this CBA. And it was registered by the same court. Why are you forgetting that part?
I have not forgotten that because I remember what I want to call the Kericho, let me call it the Kericho Declaration last year, right? I also want to recall the matrix that they actually signed against and worked on, right? And the government side said that because there's a budgeting process, I've actually had a professor here define budgeting in a very strange manner. But again, how people define things is actually not really strange in the way budgeting is done globally. Because professor here, according to professor, a budget can only be if anyone is liquid, that when you're talking about a budget, that money must be in the account. I'm yet to see a country in the world. This man has just landed from another universe because there is no country that defines budgets the way he does. Even the country in Central Europe, no one has got, including the ones with oil that we talk about, they don't define budgets the way he's actually thinking. Yes, what they are raising, and then how they are going to spend. No one.
I'm glad he said one day when he'll be the head of state, he will show us how that budgeting is done. Why don't we leave it to his doorstep?
That's what I'm actually saying. So let's start from this particular end. So we are here. The governors and the national government, and I am using the word governance deliberately because there has been an attempt by some unions to try and engage COG. COG is not an employer. Try to enforce some of these CBAs from a COG perspective. COG is not an employer. The employer is counties. So sometimes it becomes difficult. So, and they even know, because they're very brilliant human beings, that sometimes when you push to actually, they'll be engaging an illegal entity that does not even pay their salaries. So be that as it is, doctors initially had about 21 asks when they put in the strike notice. Of course, it's been mutating. It's about 9. Now, what is more prominent, we're talking about just about 4 of them. The basic salary arrears from 2017. Then we're talking about the issue of the interns and everything else. If you look at everything, I'm looking at the Laboratory and Technologies Union, for example. Their biggest problem is recognition. They want...
That's their problem.
That is the biggest problem. But they have got 9 demands. There are counties, for example, that have actually acceded to some of those demands. But then, even for people like Bungoma who have acceded to that, somehow there's no difference between Bungoma and Kajiado, for example, that has not signed that. So, there is a fiscal consequence that must actually be talked about. There are fiscal considerations to this. Because it's so easy for guys to say a recognition is not a big thing. But once you've actually recognized, because unions are like the proverbial camel. Once they bring in the head, soon there will be the hump and they will actually throw you out. So everything that we are talking about, all those demands have got a financial implication to it. When they talk, they will actually be very eloquent and tell you, nah, there's no financial. Some of these things are so easy. But when you sit down from a government, stop him raising his hand and threatening me with that hand. I kept quiet when he spoke and went on and on. So let me say this, that for all those asks, whether they are 21, 9, or 4, depending on whatever.
They've been collapsed.
Whatever they try to collapse them,
yes.
Whatever you look at it, it has got a physical consequence and baseline to it. You can't run away to that, from that. I have spoken about this essential service, the service they actually provide. But can we also talk about this? What we have today are what I call Weetabix unions. Because union leadership that we have today are so weak that they rush to use the ultimate weapon.
Which is Article 37.
When they fail to negotiate, when they fail in the management of unions and the affairs of labor administration, they rush to this particular end because for them, they would rather have the public being hurt. By the way, it is a leadership that has not really anchored itself properly. You know, and I want, the good thing is that I know that you are related to a former teacher who was a unionist, a strong one. If you see how NAT, at some point, teaching was the lowest paying government job. See how the unionists over time have actually strengthened the teaching fraternity and how they worked around that. What we see today are people who are quite reactionary. Of course, there is a problem here, and we're talking about from 2017. So the government of the day and where we are today has had its own failure. So we cannot say that the government is 100% clean. But we can also not take away these from the unions and how they've actually, how, for example, they've left some of these things to actually go around. Governors, for example, committed, said, some of these things we will do in June. We are not yet in June. Some of these things, because of the budgeting cycle, we will do them in September.
They've not done. Okay, Maliba, I get you. We are prolonging this. KMPDU has declined. This is the latest. Has declined the proposal that you're saying.
Yes.
Secretary General Atela says medics excluded in negotiation process insist appointment letters will not be picked until the demands are met and the 2017 CBA is fully implemented. Maliba, that's where we are, and that's what I want us to address.
It's actually the headline. It's actually the headline on the newspaper. Let me just finish on.
How do you know it's the headline? You already have the headline.
I have actually read the paper.
Okay.
I realize one thing.
Yeah, just briefly, because I need to go
just
to
shortly.
Yeah.
Can I actually just repeat this so that then we don't rush through? This is a very important discussion. That no one is trivializing the issues raised by the unions. No one.
They are pertinent issues.
They are important issues. Then what we also are asking is that on the other side of government is that we should be able to listen to them. Because again, no one in government is in the business of ensuring that people are suffering in hospitals. If there are people who love to be loved are politicians. Politicians love to be loved. So they are not in the business of frustrating Kenyans for sport. But then there are physical considerations that actually have to be put in place. So we are coming at a place where we shouldn't be talking to each other. We should reduce the difference. We should reduce the distance between these particular issues. But what we are saying here is that if you look at all those issues, whether you choose to look at them as 21, as 9 or 4, is that they cannot be done at once. It needs to be procedural. Now that doctors have decided to abscond, we take cognizance of that and say, can we have a return to work formula that actually works around this?
I think I want to say the following, Maliba, for a way just to educate a little bit what you are trying to say, that they cannot be done at once. You've read there that doctors, Atela has said that you have to accept the collective bargain agreement, isn't it? Collective means that the government was part of it, isn't it? So they're not coming with demands from the moon and throwing them down.
And this has been there for how many years? 2017, 7 years?
Yes, for 7 years.
Yes.
So for 7 years, they do their budget and they don't care about the doctors. And I want to remind Maliba, I like what you have said, that you have recognized that doctors offer essential service and they're essential service providers. Why are they not essential in the budget-making process? Why are they not essential in salary payment?
That's my question, because this has been there for a while.
And by the way, a reactionary question. It's so reactionary because
by the way, they have been paid.
He has been
they
in
have been
governance.
paid. Suddenly, they are revising the payment.
They've been paid.
He has been doing memorandums. Prof,
let me finish my
Prof,
point.
If you
I've gone to Parliament.
Yes.
I've gone to Parliament to petition Parliament that we cannot allow doctors to go into the street because they are taking Hippocratic oath. Hippocratic oath cannot be lived in a vacuum. That you have taken an oath, you are an essential worker, you cannot go on strike, yet everybody is going on strike on you. Your pocket is on strike. They have come with so many levies to reduce what doctors are earning. There's another person told me that after Kenya Kwanza became into government, he has lost 112,000 shillings from his payslip just because of these levies and deductions.
Which levies are these?
You know them. Everyone knows.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
Ken, it's important.
Maliba,
in God we trust. Everybody else must bring data.
Yes.
This is an evidence-based platform.
Levy.
He cannot show up here. 1.5%. How is that?
Today the front
I think it depends on the amount of money someone is earning.
Okay, that 1.5%. He's saying so many levies. The second one?
Today the front page of the People's
Daily. Do you
Daily.
want us to go there, Maliba?
Have you realized that
the numbers
he's not answering the question?
He's not answered that.
Yeah.
Today's front page of People's Daily said robbery without violence.
No, he wants the data. He wants you to justify how the 121 comes. Is it a single levy? Is it a single levy?
Several.
Which and which?
Now, that's what he's asking. Which
He's
one?
adding the deductions.
Yeah.
House levy.
Which is
House levy, which is just taking effect in March.
Isn't it?
Which is taking NSSF is a new one. He's talking about they have increased.
No, he's not talking about new.
He said they have increased levies.
They have increased.
Many levies. I want him to list that.
Guys, are we getting lost somewhere?
You see, Prof must actually choose his profession so well.
Maliba, okay, hold on, gentlemen. Prof, if you say this, it has to be qualified.
Yes.
Are there many levies or an additional levies that has escalated the pay slip to this?
Yes, they have escalated additional levies.
So, which additional
Which
levies?
are
We
these
need to,
additional
the new,
levies?
are they the new ones or just the ones that have been added on top of
Is
what
it
existed?
quantitative or you're talking about qualitative?
Quantitative.
Quantitative.
Let's go. List
Give
them.
us, give us,
Quantify.
yes.
List them.
Yeah.
I don't want to mention a name and someone's salary, but I'm sure that somebody is listening to me, isn't it? If you are for example, if you're earning 1.2 million shillings, isn't it? And someone takes away from you 1.5%, isn't it? That is how much, Maliba? That's how much.
I want you to compute that so that then we speak to percentage.
Yes, what I'm trying to tell you is that when you're earning something to do with...
Because if you run with the
if you're
absolute
earning
figures...
around 1.8 million shillings...
How many Kenyans earn that?
If you look at all the deductions and levies going into it, you'll be losing around 100.
Let's conclude this.
Again, out
Maliba.
of 3.5
Let me
million
let me
Kenyans
prosecute my
who
point.
earn
100,000
official
shillings and
salaries,
above. Maliba, I need to end this.
we have got less
Let
than
me
3% who earn above
Maliba.
100,000. So
Let me
who is
We are
this friend of
digressing.
yours who earns
We are digressing.
1.8?
We are digressing.
He's using one misnomer of data and trying
There
to
is no
push a
misnomer
falsehood
there.
and a narrative. Because
And this
3%
is
of
the CFO,
Kenyans,
this is the
3%
CFO
of
of a bank.
Kenyans
So
earn
he
above
he
100,000.
has stated.
He's pushing above
We need to end this
1%.
conversation. We need to end this
One
conversation.
person.
Maliba,
Let me proceed to my point.
Maliba.
His
Let me-
point,
Maliba.
his
Let me-
point is faulty.
No,
We
it's
have,
not.
he said, a
Of
CFO of the bank.
a
Now
bank.
we
A
understand.
CFO of the bank.
Now we understand where
And,
it's coming
and
from.
he wants to
Prof,
use
conclude.
a 1%er against the rest of
I'm just trying to
99%.
tell you the
Maliba,
deductions are
can we
made. Maliba.
focus?
And if you were to equate that with the people who are earning 20,000, you will realize
Maliba, can we
that
focus?
120,000 he's complaining about is peanuts to that CFO of the bank.
112,000
People-
cannot be a peanut to anybody.
No.
Lose 1 shilling that you're not
That
getting
is
every
not
month.
true.
Gentlemen,
He's
we are
talking-
digressing
he's
and I'm
talking
going
about
out of-
a
I'm
people,
running out of
Ken,
time. I'm
he's
gonna
talking
end this
about a
conversation.
people who can actually buy a bottle of alcohol at 40,000 shillings one night. He's the one who's saying that that's not much money.
Me, I don't
My
drink
friend, those
alcohol.
people are not the same.
Anyway, Ken, let me
Yes,
finish my
let's
point.
come back.
The
Let's
other
come back
thing,
to
the other
this.
thing I was talking about here is that healthcare is devolved, 90% devolved, isn't it? We are looking at the amount of money the government retains. They have retained 65% of the money allocated to healthcare to remain with research and strategy. Can you imagine research and strategy? It retains 65%, only gives 35% to the counties. I want to urge them to put more money in healthcare, especially in counties.
Okay.
Because they are just employing people, but there's no medicine.
But Prof, how do you go ahead to urge a government that is unfazed, that is saying we don't have the money, and KMPDU
They
is telling us
have.
tonight we are not reporting, Maliba is telling us pick the letters tomorrow, KMPDU is saying we are not doing it, we have a stalemate, we have pictures from hospitals.
No, but I'm
what
saying-
discussion are we having?
My
KMPDU
brother.
is using
I think
those
it is
sorry
my
photos,
chance.
those photos from hospitals to try and incite Kenyans. And but they remember they had 100-day strike, which in and of itself is actually very unfair.
2017, Maliba.
100 days.
Maliba, can Prof finish
And
then?
since the 100-day, for example, the basic salary arrears from 2017 to 2021,
They're being
this
paid.
new government now is the one that is taking care of them. And now we are
2.4B.
flogging them.
2.4B.
I'm just telling you, when you remember 2017 who was in power, right? And you are flogging this administration and making it
That
look
was
like...
also in power.
No, that's not how it works. You know that much better.
The deputy president then is the president.
One person, the government is
power
not
for
one person.
But
in
he
power
was
for-
privy to what was happening
I'll
in
just tell you that
2017.
just because
Maliba, you
he
can't
has been
give
in
an
academia
excuse.
for long,
You cannot give
that
an
then
excuse.
if there's a problem in the academia, he is one of the reasons. He's not, definitely.
He was privy to what was happening in 2017 as the deputy president. True or false?
So he's being flogged for that.
He's not being flogged. They're just saying implement the CBA so that we move on. Don't go to SRC.
Implementing
and
a
cut.
CBA is not like picking a storybook and reading. I said, number one, there are physical consequences. Number two, there are
When they were
administrative
signing it,
challenges.
did they
Number
know that
three,
there was a fiscal consequence?
and that is
to it?
why the government is saying, can we do this procedurally? Can
But
we
you
have
can't
the
go
reason?
back on
Because
what
there
you
is no
signed.
there is no goodwill. There is no good faith.
Okay, Maliba. Okay, Maliba.
Ken, just
You need to
listen.
finish also,
Let me
Prof.
tell you.
Yes.
No,
you
but
also
I'm not
need-
finishing.
Yes.
When he's
Actually, the
taking all
professor
the
takes
time.
much longer.
No. If you're taking
Let's
his
be
time
honest,
now,
man.
and
Come
we
on.
have
It takes much
10 minutes.
longer.
We have
Yes.
10 minutes.
We can measure this using AI, artificial intelligence.
No, I'll just put on here.
Let me continue, my brother. I think that in all honesty, he's talking about the previous government. There's what you call a government being a going concern. The obligations of previous government, you must inherit them. and you must execute them. Because you cannot tell me this was Uhuru's government. There's no Uhuru's government. In fact, I hate this thing people personally as a government. There's a government of Kenya. In fact, there's no Kenya Kwanza government. We have a government
when we started,
of Kenya.
He said, this Kenya Kwanza government.
Yes, of course.
That's an oxymoron.
Of course, because they have... Maliba, come on.
Maliba.
That's how he started.
Maliba,
We were on
minutes.
this particular
I have 10
platform.
minutes. I know.
When he said,
you will have
now he has changed.
You will react to it.
Anything I say hurts you, my brother.
No, it doesn't. Why would I be hurt? I'm just reminding you
So
that you cannot eat your tomatoes and have them.
I'm seeing a stalemate in this. We are not getting away
let me
forward
just
in the
continue.
doctors.
So what I'm trying to say here is that a government is a going concern. Even in accounting, there must be a going concern. Even if you borrow money for 50 years, there is no one who rules for 50 years. You only rule for 5, 10 years, isn't it? So that has to continue. So they should not separate Uhuru Kenyatta government and the government headed by William Ruto. This is what is called government of Kenya. That's all. Then I'll talk about devolution. I was trying to prosecute by saying that they are retaining too much money. Because you ask why is the money.
Government.
Yes, you are returning too much money at the national level and not giving much money to the county government where healthcare takes place.
How much are they retaining? In total, it's about 50-60%?
They are retaining 65%.
65%.
Yet it is 90% devolved.
Okay.
I should be thinking the amount of there should be a correlation between the devolution level and the amount of money being retained.
Okay.
So that one for me is something they need to change about. And the last thing, which is I want to really give as advice, a government that takes power normally have a social contract with the people. Like they took a social contract with the patients, not with the doctors, that there'll be health care. There'll be universal health care coverage. They never said, we'll give you treatment if doctors don't go on strike. So the third party blame is not supposed to be there. Me, I'm saying at this time, we have a failed state. Why? Because a state where people cannot have health care, then blaming doctors is not the issue, because you are a government. The government should tell us what is the alternative if doctors continue being on strike, because it is not your control if they'll come out tomorrow. They should continue executing and prosecuting the social contract. Last point, which for me is very important. We have had problems during the doctor strike whereby you pick not so qualified people to take care of patients, and there's a lot of negligences, and there'll be a lot of mistakes. For example, there's a time when physicians, clinicians were allowed to do surgeries. You know, there are surgeries that even they're allowed to do, which they are not qualified to do. People have lost families. People have lost babies. People have lost everything. And it can be so detrimental. I want to tell Kenya Kwanza that the most important thing is that let's choose their priorities. Priority should be healthcare, education, and people's living, cost of living. Other things should come later, whereby you are pushing too much on our throat. The issue of affordable housing.
No, don't go there. We will start a topic.
I'm not saying we don't.
That is a conversation.
Let us prioritize.
He's so good with
health,
that.
because health is life.
Let's stick there. Health is life. Maliba now.
Ken, I'll start from here so that then we don't go so far. First of all, Prof is throwing around data left, right, and center that is not centered on anything. For example, if you were to look at this 90% devolved part of it, he's not told you and quantified whether that is about, we're talking about primary health care at what level, and then what the national government retains. Who's doing the training? National government. Who's doing quality assurance? At that particular, the referral system, they are doing that, and so much more. So when he runs around and talks about 90%, it's not based on anything other than conjecture. He has not pegged that on the framework, on how we actually have the health framework in this particular country. So that 90 figure, only him knows where he has actually fished it from. And when Kenyans are listening on the other side, they could actually think, because he's a professor, they will actually buy that hook, line, and sinker, when he actually has fished it from nowhere. I can tell you, I challenge you that after I've spoken, let him actually tell you exactly what constitutes the healthcare system and what that 90% is. This is conjecture. It's actually data he's just fished out from somewhere else. God knows where he got that.
In your view, it's how much?
Secondly,
we need to allow Maliba also to talk.
When he spoke, I allowed that.
We need to allow Maliba to talk, then you
Let me
challenge
execute. Let me execute my point.
Yes,
I'm just telling you, I'm actually bringing down. But he's used that number. And by the way, if you torture data so much, it actually confesses to anything you want. And that's what Professor has done. He's torturing data left, right, and center, so long as it can stick on Kenya Kwanza not being inefficient and everything else. And the Professor here has actually perfected the art of being a merchant of venom. He's here selling sob stories about how he's making very serious allegations, and he has not reported that to the agency that is actually in charge, where clinicians have operated. He's not done that. He knows, by the way, much better the agency that is actually in charge of that and how that he should actually go to court on that. Other than come here, sell a sob story, run around with it, incite Kenyans, and not help them. From where we are, the issue of the doctors or the medics strike is not one we should not be winning, we should not be arguing about who wins. Because like I've told you, people's lives are online. Number two, doctors are not your ordinary service providers. Therefore, we would expect and pray that KPMDU and all the other unions
come to the realization.
Not really come to the realization, but also as government makes progress, like for example, they've been fighting on this since 2017, right? Now, there is an attempt at solving some of those issues, right? You saw what Hobbs, the head of public service, did. Came up with a 13-member committee, tried to bring down some of these issues. There is even a court order. We should not run away from this thing called the rule of law. Because if today doctors defy that court order, tomorrow, government which has got actually a monopoly of violence, if they chose to, and KPMDU has got an issue that is so dear to them, they go to court and government pulls the same thing, then we will be running around talking about impunity. Impunity cannot only apply to those who are in office.
Maliba, can I ask a simple question?
Also applies to them who should be obeying, even those who are out.
Can I ask a simple question?
Yes.
Just if you answer that question, I'm home and dry with this.
Yes.
This CBA was signed in 2017.
Yes.
Forget the circumstances
prevailing
at that time.
Yes.
The doctors have been patiently waiting for the last 7 years for this CBA to be implemented. They gave us strike notice and they said the reasons for this strike notice. And the government of the day is aware. Then you come and tell us now that we have to renegotiate. The doctors are saying, but we've had this from 2017. Please renegotiate. And then they say, this is what we can give you. This one we can't give you. Go back to the... So you bully them back to... Maliba, is this the solution of the government should be bothering itself with? How do we honor this CBA? That is the question I want you to answer.
I might not agree with how the current CS has dealt with this issue. But in 2017, where was Nahumicha? She wasn't in the room that signed
there was
that.
a government.
I'm just saying, yes, there was a government. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So here, what we are not talking to is that there was the Kericho Declaration, right? Or rather, I want to call it the Kericho Declaration, the Kericho Accord, and everything else. Mm-hmm. It was an attempt by this administration, because, by the way, watches also matter. On whose watch was the Kericho Declaration effected?
Okay.
It was effected under the Kenya Kwanza administration. What were they dealing with? They were dealing with issues that were 6 years long in the mouth. And they came up with a framework. There are few issues that are behind schedule, but this is the truth. That as a country, we are having a fiscal deficit.
Okay.
We are struggling. We've just taken care of this Eurobond the other day. Everybody knew that we were defaulting. Forget the people who sell snake oil like Prof here who are telling you that there's so much money. There's not so much money. Otherwise, if there was so much money, as he actually tries to tell you, politicians will do magic, because politicians can even print money if it is going to ensure that they are popular and they are serving the people. So forget whatever he's saying here.
So what is your answer?
So the point is this.
Yes.
The point is this, that the government of the day engaged from last year, Kericho Declaration. 2, we've actually allowed everybody to engage at their level so that then governors can actually deal at what they're supposed to do. Let me ask you, the governor of Kirinyaga, for example, fired some clinical officers a long time ago, right?
And it didn't work?
No. It is one of the reasons the clinical officers are on the roads today, right? How are the people of Kakamega, whose governor did not fire anyone, paying for this? And we call that rational. We want to run that and sentimentalize it to a point that, okay, they are right and government is wrong. A mistake that was done in Kirinyaga, in a devolved unit, let's call it a mistake. How are the people of Busia,
Yeah.
whose government did not do
Notify
that,
anyone.
why
Okay.
are they paying for that?
I get your
so
point.
What am I saying?
Yes,
I am saying that the unions, no one is trivializing what they are saying, but we need union leadership that has got a little bit of a backbone. Not people who run. If vita kidogo wanaleta silaha ya nini, as in it's a conversation that they should not be bringing up this issue as strike.
If they feel that they are not being listened to, they'll invoke Article 37.
You cannot take the ultimate weapon for a small disagreement.
Because the government did not expect them to put that. They did not expect that.
No, do you know what is interesting? Everything that does not affect me is small. When you don't pay someone's salary, you condemn them to poverty. That's small. Someone cannot afford a meal.
Government has moved forward to effect that.
Deductions for NSSF, 4 years in Mombasa. Linda Ugatuzi, Linda Jamii that I ran, I have those data. In Mombasa, they told me, deductions have been 4 years back. Joho used to pay 3, 4. Now they are 5.
5 years.
So it is clear. Then I wanted just to tell.
Joho used to pay?
It used to take 3 or 4. Now it's getting to 5 years.
Before
deductions don't begin. These people have loans. Yeah. Imagine you have a loan. You are not able to pay a loan, and someone tells you that thing and it's been
deducted from your salary. I hear you, Prof. You're running out of time.
Let me make my point here, because there's something I want to bring Maliba to
just
clear.
Briefly, yes.
When you tell me that 65%,
and we still have the video of the week,
yes,
by the way.
If you say 65% is returned up here, where the national government, then 25,000 going to the counties is paying salaries. That is 90% going to OPEX. Meaning that pay recurrent expenditure. Yeah. None is going to buy medicine. That's why in all healthcare facilities, you go to the counties, there is no medicine.
I think
because
90% is a lie.
Prof
cannot say that there are no medicine in all hospitals, and we live in this country. Prof, which country do you live in?
They have heard you. Kenyans have heard you.
This is a lie. There are medicines in hospitals. It might not be to the place.
Private
hospitals that he goes to.
You are given prescription. You got to buy elsewhere.
Go buy
elsewhere. That's what happens.
Gentlemen,
Prof is an upmarket guy, so he thinks that everybody must be given. He goes to hospital yenye wanapatiwanga dawa kama chakula. As unapatiwa chakula kwa nini? But the rest of Kenyans actually who use government services, and they are very effective. That's what the majority are.
Okay.
So when you use sweeping statements that there are no medicines, who has trained all these doctors? Who is equipping these hospitals? Who has put up the standards? This system is functioning because there is a government in place.
What we wanted explanation about was the 90% devolved and
it 65%. Is there in the Constitution.
No.
Where does the Constitution talk about 90%?
It's devolved services.
It's not 100%
devolved. Yes. So the 90%, how
did you arrive to it?
But that's the number.
Yes,
how did you arrive at it? Quantify.
What has
devolution in healthcare is stated clearly. It is 90% devolved.
In the Constitution?
Yes.
Quantify.
Yes, in the county government, yes, 90% devolved. This is a fact.
Okay.
Call Dr. Dagji, call
you have asked him to quantify
If you refuse 90, which number is devolved?
No, I'm talking about
you quantify, break
Can
it down. Give your number?
I want you to
break it down. Give your number.
Look at this. You made a claim.
It is clear. Even you can Google that one. You can search
You cannot be telling us that the law is clear.
What is your percentage, Maliba?
Okay.
He's not cited any law. He's not cited a specific one.
What's your percentage?
Okay. Gentlemen, I need to play the video of the week, then we'll end the show. Let's roll.
Tangu tupate uhuru, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta alikuwa president wa Kenya miaka 15. Ninyi mnajua namna hiyo? Alikufia kwa ofisi. Mwai Kibaki marehemu akakuwa president miaka 10, si ndio? Yeye akakuwa 25. Uhuru Kenyatta akakuwa president miaka 10, ikakuwa 35. Jamii ya Kikuyu wamesema hiyo imewatosha. Hawataki mambo ya ulafi, hiyo imewatosha. Jamii ya Kalenjin Mzee Moi aligonga 24. Hiyo record hata tukiishi miaka mingapi haitawahi vunjwa. 24. Mheshimiwa Ruto hako saa hizi ndio? Mungu akimjalia aende yake 10 atakuwa amegonga miaka 34 wa Kalenjin. Jamii mbili imegonga miaka 69 kama rais wa Kenya, si ndio? Wapiga bwana.
Okay, gentlemen, the context of that discussion is what is going on in the country. And just because we have run out of time, I just wanted your brief comments. And this one I'll begin with Maliba. Maliba, what's happening in Western between Moses Wetangula and Natembeya? Just briefly, we are out of time.
I think what's happening in Western Kenya is not unique to Western Kenya. It's happening in other areas. But then to just pack the question where you wanted it to be, is that number one, generally, we now have got what I call a generational handover. And that millennials and the guys just ahead of them are now becoming the core people who actually get into the spaces of decision making. So it's a demographic imperative.
Okay.
And you look at Western, today as we speak, millennials are the people who actually are the biggest voting bloc. These human beings between 26 and 43. That is the core of the voting bloc. Now, literally, everybody else, what is happening under our nose is that there's a change of guard. It's been gradual, but now we are getting into a place where now, quote unquote, the young tax actually get in. But specifically for Natembeya and Moses Wetangula, it's so easy. And that also plugs into what we were discussing today, especially on the health issue, that Natembeya feels threatened, that the party leader of Ford Kenya has been going around bringing in somebody else to actually take over. So he's actually fighting a defensive battle.
Okay.
And instead of fighting the person who has been brought in there, who's being prepared to unseat him,
He's fighting
he has
the
decided.
bringer.
He has decided that he will not deal with any dog.
Yes.
He will deal with the owner of the... So that's what is happening there, generally.
Yeah.
But
Prof,
anyway.
yeah.
According
I'll give
to-
you a minute to close on the health issue. Don't worry.
According to me, it is unfortunate what's happening in all these regions, because I don't like when people cite tribes. I don't know what is our time. All these things does not matter. What is important is that what leader does Kenya want in 2027, not more of which tribe has gotten. Because we might actually need another Kikuyu to lead Kenya in 2027. Because if the Kikuyu is the most suited person, why not? And I do not like the politics on Natembeya, because he has not told us what is his purpose. You know, nowadays talk about purpose leadership. What do you identify with? In fact, the crisis we're having in the country, now we're talking about succession, which is happening in Luo Nyanza. It's having a challenge here in Mount Kenya, now in Western Kenya, is that we are people who are very popular, but they're not popular for any purpose.
Okay.
You know, if, for example, those who are going home, for example, Raila Odinga are going to AU, isn't it? What was Raila's philosophy in education, isn't it? What was Raila's philosophy in ODM that someone can actually inherit? If you're inheriting an ODM, what are you inheriting?
Okay.
Are you inheriting an ideology? Because parties have, there's actually, according to me, there's no political parties in Kenya. They're just things people use as vehicles to get to power. So according to me, Natembeya, if he's believing he's championing the next generation, he should start saying, which kind of philosophy, ideology, leadership do we want?
Okay.
And we forget about the issues of name calling and tribalism, because the more we mention those tribes, the more we become very strong. And I can tell you, only politicians come to remind you during election that you are this tribe, that tribe. But I can tell you, all Kenyans live harmoniously. Where I live with all the communities in the same place. We have never even quarreled on a parking space.
Okay.
Why do we quarrel only on the ballot?
Okay. Because you're speaking, I'll give you your closing remarks on the issues we discussed, especially the medical. What do you want to see tomorrow when we wake up? Because patients are suffering. 30 seconds.
I would like to wake up tomorrow, and I want the doctors to go back to work. But before that, the conditions they have given is favorable enough, and I want to urge doctors to stand on those conditions. The only person to change their mind is the government, but in the long term, I urge doctors, set up the Health Service Commission to address for you these issues, just like Teacher Service Commission is helping them.
Well said, Prof. Well said. Maliba, 30 seconds. Tomorrow when we wake up, the government, are we seeing them moved because nothing has changed? 30 seconds, Tafadhali.
This is the position. It's not about the government. It's about all stakeholders. And specifically here, the medics, the unions, to actually come back to the table and stop this politics of terrorism. Because now we have got people who are suffering, and since it makes government look ineffective, inefficient, incompetent, uncaring, we use that and push that. Let's not be so selfish. Government has actually made a move, obtained a budget, paid arrears that were from 2017 to 2021. We are at a place where
to pay the rest.
the interns have been told to pick their letters from tomorrow.
They've said they're not picking, so just tell us.
No, the interns themselves have not spoken. It is the unions.
The union has spoken. They speak to the union. Maliba, I'm going to close the show.
The union has got members.
They can't all come and
there is no union of interns. So we're just saying, as in these are guys who are not even yet in the industry. So that is just one of those.
They are in the industry.
No, those are some of the issues they are using to sensationalize these issues. But this is the issue. For all interns out there, in the name of God, pick your letters. For all medics out there, speak to your leaders. And for the union leaders, demonstrate leadership.
Okay.
What we see now is not leadership. The government has demonstrated leadership. We have got constraints as a people. We do not exist. This particular crisis does not exist in
isolation.
In isolation.
Thank you.
Please look at everything. Let us come up with a framework and engage again. It doesn't hurt to engage.
Well said. I hope they find a solution by tomorrow. Patients are suffering. That's all we know. The patients are suffering as this standoff escalates. And now, government, we don't have money. Take it or leave it. KMPDU, we are not taking it. We are leaving it. Thank you so much for watching, Prof. Always a pleasure having you on board. Fred, I'm looking forward to having another discussion. And Maliba, thank you so much. Arnold Maliba for coming on the show tonight. And on behalf of Polycarp Omondi and everyone that has made this show possible,